The largest gathering of human beings takes place at the Kumbh Mela festival in India. 50 million people. And in India, when we say millions, it's actually not hundreds of thousands, but millions of people. It is also the largest collection of Hindu holy men, yogis, mystics. These are career spiritualists who have dedicated their lives to self-actualization. And mindfulness and meditation are part of their practice. Last year, I was at the Kumbh Mela on the banks of the river Ganges in Haridwar in the Indian Himalayas. Early one morning, I was walking along the river when I saw this yogi, and he was not in a yoga pose. He was not meditating. He was not chanting Sanskrit mantras. Instead, he was jabbering away on the cell phone. And I thought to myself, what are we doing with the great technologies we built here in Silicon Valley, driving to distraction these professional meditators? But seriously, we have built an amazingly connected society. Of the 7 billion people on this planet, 2 billion are on the internet. And there are 4 to 5 billion estimated cell phones. And all of this connectivity has had a profound impact, and I'm acutely aware of it, given my job at Google and given that I grew up in India. In fact, let me share a personal story. My roots go back to a tiny Indian rice farming village called Chittilancheri in Kerala in southern India. My grandparents were poor rice farmers in Chittilancheri. My parents grew up there without electricity, running water, and nothing more than a basic village school education, modest at best. But they went on to create the circumstances so that their 4 children, between us, could earn 10 college degrees. Thank you. Including 2 from US Ivy League business schools, even though my parents had never set foot in America. So what costed social mobility in one generation was access to information. Today, when I go back to Chittilancheri and look at the village school where my mother studied, it looks pretty much the same. But for one difference. For kids in that school, and thousands of other schools like that all over the world, if they have access to the internet and services like Google, they now have access to the same amount of information as somebody who goes to Berkeley. These technologies are leveling the playing field for information for all of humanity, which is fantastic. But these technologies can also drive us to distraction. There is the volume issue. When I go back home today, there are probably 100 messages waiting in my inbox, clamoring for my attention, and it's only a Saturday. Status updates don't understand that it's Saturday night in my life. And there is no volume, there's no dial by which you can turn it down. It is a problem all of us are struggling with. And to deal with this technology, to process all the information that these technologies throw at you, we all have to work with another piece of technology that is the most complex, most sophisticated piece of technology that we know of. It is amazing in its capacity to learn, to be self-healing, and to synthesize data and information. And the beauty of it is equally available to every single human being on this planet. It is equally accessible to Kenyan tribesmen in Masai Mara as it is to a Silicon Valley CEO. And what is it? It is our brain, along with our body, our breath, our consciousness, this most amazing piece of technology. But the interesting thing about this piece of technology is that if you want to take it to peak performance, it needs its moments, its periods of quiet time. It needs its periods of mindfulness. But paradoxically, all these other technologies that we get fascinated with their rings, with their pings, with their tweets, drag us in the opposite direction. And sometimes We have to stop, unplug from the internet, and plug into the internet. And I want to share with you 5 strategies by which I try to do it, because I walked into the lion's den by choosing a job at Google in Silicon Valley. So there's no dial for me. Here are my 5 strategies. First, focus on the essential. As German philosopher Goethe said, things that are more important should not be at the mercy of things that are less important. So how many essentials do you need in your life? Start with 1, maybe 3. In my case, it is 5. Several years ago, I went and stayed in a Benedictine monastery and wrote down the organizing principles of my life on 1 sheet of paper. And then I distilled it down to 5 words so that I could carry it around with my fingertips. And for these 12 years, much of the attention of this technology has been around those 5 words to the exclusion of everything else. The second strategy I employ is do one thing at a time. Because this technology is exceptionally good at focusing on a single task, but give it 5 tasks, and it completely malfunctions. I often sit in meetings at Google and listen to a presentation while trying to answer an email. Does this sound familiar? Responding to 3 chat windows and eating lunch at the same time. It's the curse of continuous partial attention, as Linda Stone calls it. But at the end of the session, what I typically find is that I did not engage well with the content that was discussed. I've sent an embarrassing chat message to the wrong person in the wrong window. Yeah. She did forgive me. And I have food on my keyboard and I have no idea what I ate for lunch. The third strategy I employ is 1 minute of mindfulness. Whatever mindfulness may be for you. It may be reading poetry. It may be dance. So I've committed myself to for me, mindfulness means yoga and meditation, my primary practices. So I've committed myself to 1 minute of yoga and 1 minute of meditation every single day. Now that should strike you as the most ridiculous, pointless idea from this conference, right? You should ask for your money back. But I used to have this fancy goal of I want to do yoga for 1 hour and meditate for 30 minutes every single day. How often I did it? Never, because I had a good reason. I don't have the time. Till a wise friend of mine with a lot more wisdom than I have told me, Gopi, start with 1 breath. Because even when you want to meditate for a full hour, it's really 600 breaths strung together. I thought about it, and since I'm a neurotic, compulsive overachiever, I said, I can exceed that, I can do a whole minute. But when I made that shift, something shifted inside me when I made that commitment. A week went by, a month went by, and there was not a single day where I could argue that I don't have 120 seconds in my life. And when I look back, it struck me that I had done yoga and meditation every single day in my life. For the first time, I felt like there was some sense of integrity towards my commitment. But a bigger shift took place, and that was often when I sit on the cushion for meditation for just 1 minute, I ask myself, what is the rush? What am I going towards? Why don't I sit for, this is so enjoyable, why don't I sit for another minute? And often I end up sitting for 3 minutes, 10 minutes. And like last night, effortlessly, I meditated for a full 30 minutes. Aha, magic happens. The fourth strategy is making appointments for mindfulness in your calendar. But more importantly, make it absolutely non-negotiable, non-erasable. That delete button for that appointment should be completely gone. Find 1 anchor in your life every week that you will absolutely, totally commit to no matter what happens. For me personally, I have 3 anchors that are completely non-negotiable every week. One of them is to lead a yoga practice at Google every Monday evening for the Googlers. And my practice is called Yoglers. I have been doing this for 5 years now. I have never missed a session in 5 years. Thank you. Unless I'm traveling, in which case I find a substitute and I take a practice with me on the road. So I've taught at the Google office in Tokyo, and I've led the practice in Buenos Aires. Meanwhile, somebody else is continuing the practice here. But that is one non-negotiable anchor in my calendar that I refuse to compromise on. So find your non-negotiables. The fifth strategy is to friend yourself. All of us are proud of the fact that we have hundreds of connections on Facebook, that we have thousands of followers on Twitter. It's amazing that these technologies allow us to establish these relationships with thousands of people around the world. But the most important relationship we can have is the one with ourselves. The most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. So listen to the tweet of your heartbeat. Pay attention to the status update from your body. And respond to that urgent chat request from your brain. My message to you today is very simple. We all have access to this amazing piece of technology. We are gifted in terms of our brain, along with our body, our breath, and our consciousness. But to move this technology to peak performance, it needs its periods of mindfulness. It needs you to plug into the internet. So the question I want to leave you with is this: how will you commit to something today to ritualize something into your life to allow your core piece of technology to move to peak performance by plugging into the internet? How? Namaste.